Let's look at a couple of ways on how to render glass. I'm gonna use this glass decanter here to demonstrate some examples. So as usual, let's start by creating a camera and point it straight at the decanter. I'm gonna make sure my target and camera is aligned with the central y-axis. Alright, like that. Perfect. And let's set the width and height, something like 400 by 500. Okay. So back to our camera. Let's make sure the white balance is set to neutral and shutter speed is reduced to 20. And I think we can start. So if you render now, it's just gonna be almost black. So it's gonna be simply black, since we don't have any lights whatsoever in the scene. So two of the most effective ways to render glass on a white background and on a black background. Let's start with the black background. Let's make a simple plane and move it behind our decanter. Okay, and I'm gonna assign basic flat black material to the background. Okay, and let's switch to V-Ray RT for our preview renders. Right. Now we need to create some lights. Okay, let's start with a box. I want some reflections all around the bottle to create a nice silhouette. Collapse the box to editable poly. Delete the front and back polygons. And we have this frame left over. Let's flip it inside out so it's pointing towards the decanter. And we're gonna create V-Ray light material for it. So create a new V-Ray light material. Set it to 30. And enable direct illumination. And you can see the result here in the ActiveShade window straight away. If you wish the background to be darker, reduce the diffuse to 0, and it's not lit anymore at all. Okay. And if you move this light box around, you can get all sorts of different silhouettes going on here. The further you move it back, the more the reflections move towards the edges of the bottle. Okay. You can scale it wider or narrower as you wish to create a nice result. For example, I like this result. Maybe let's move it back slightly. Man, that looks nice. So nicely defined silhouette. And we just need a little something to illuminate this front part with the logo. Let's use simple plane again. Rotate it like this. And move it out of the way of the camera. Actually, let's move it right behind the camera here. Okay. So it's not long enough at the moment. You want to cover all the bottle. Maybe make it a bit wider. Okay, and finally let's create V-Ray light material for it. And I'm gonna set up an opacity map. As a gradient ramp. Okay, so this is gonna be the first level of the gradient ramp. And we're gonna mix it. Keep the old map as submap. And set up a gradient ramp in the mix amount slot. And here in the mix amount I'm going to use the box type. To create softer edges. Okay, and you can adjust how much of the edges are softened by reducing the amount of white color in your gradient. So it's a bit tricky to understand how these gradients work exactly until you get some experience with it. Right now it's mixing together like this. A black outline and a slight gradient in the center. If you find it too difficult to understand, you can just create the map in Photoshop. Okay, so that's one setup. Now let's save it as gloss on black. Looks pretty good. And you can create a similar effect by using a white background as well. Actually, let's fix this light material. Let's enlarge my white material by creating an opacity map. And for this map I'm gonna create a bright color in the center and darker colors around the edges. Let's rotate 90 degrees. Okay, you can see the preview on your model here. Okay. So the fall off is a bit nicer and softer now. It doesn't matter if some of the edges are visible in your scene, as you can crop them out later since the background is pure black. It's not too important. Right, I think that's good. And let's create an invert version of this by changing the background to white. So go to your black material, change it to very light. Maybe let's try it at 15. Okay. So our regular... I'm gonna change the material of this frame to black. And let's leave this light as it was before. Let's see how it looks. Here's the active shade. Alright. And we need to adjust the size of this black area. Okay, since the effect is not strong enough, I'm going to select these vertices and scale them towards the center to bring the black closer. I'm also going to hide the large VR light behind me as well. And let's move the whole assembly further away. Okay, that's better. And you just want to make sure that everything around your bottle is white. This way you can crop it out later on. Okay. Just try to find the balance. And I think this looks interesting enough. And let's see how it looks when rendered with regular renderer. So let's switch to production render and render the scene. Okay, that's nice. Back to active shade. And let's add a fill light. From the front here. Okay, that's good. And finally, let's assign a gradient to our black surroundings. So change the color of the diffuse from regular black to gradient ramp. Turn on the preview. Let's rotate it 90 degrees. Okay, minus 90. And bring the black closer. Alright. Let's unhide the background light. Well, I think that's pretty good. And let's render and see how it looks. I think the resulting silhouette is pretty nice. We just have to fill the rest with white in Photoshop. So let's save that setup as glass on white. The reason why black on white and white on black works so well is because there is a lot of contrast between the object and the background. You can use a similar concept to create some more advanced renderings. For example, let's create a gray background and let's make it a gradient. So I'm gonna pick the material from the background, set it up as a regular V-Ray material, and make it quite dark like this. Okay, so that's gonna be our background. Let's hide the rest for now. And we want to add a gradient-like effect to the background. Let's launch the ActoShade. Okay, right now it's pretty dark. We're going to use a regular V-Ray light to light up the background. I'm going to make it quite wide so it covers the whole render area. Rotate it like this, so it sort of falls down, the light falls down. And increase the strength until I have the effect I want. Notice how nice the contrast between this dark outline of the cap looks against the lighter background. Ideally, we would like something similar going on the bottom part here. And in fact, we can do that by unhiding our box. Let's scale it smaller. Okay, and let's set up a new material for it. Actually, I'm gonna copy this this gradient light from this large light. Okay, so this is how it looks. I'm gonna copy that to a new slot. And I'm gonna change the map a bit. Okay, so I assign it to the box. And looking at our render, we want the bottom part to stay bright and the top part to remain black. Alright, so we can do that by changing our gradient ramp. I mean, this ramp. Okay, it looks like we need to fix the mapping. Just gonna throw on a quick UVW map. And scale it up like this. Alright, so now the gradient looks sort of okay, but we need to adjust the intensity of the black color. Make the black part extend further. And you can control this lower reflective area precisely by adjusting the sliders. Okay, so that's pretty nice. I want to bump up the intensity of this light. Let's try it at 20, 30. Okay, let's bump up to 50. So that's nice. Maybe make the transition a bit smoother like this. And that looks good. Okay. And I also want to move this light slightly, just to change it up a bit from the previous renders. Make it slightly larger and rotate it. And offset to the side. I'm just playing around with the position and size of this reflection box. Okay. And let's make this light stronger. Just bring up the editor and increase the strength. Right. And that's a nice render of glass on some gradient background. You can crop the sides out in Photoshop easily later on.